We've been told that anxiety is a problem, a weakness to be cured, a malfunction in the mind that needs fixing. But what if it isn't? What if the anxiety you feel before speaking up, before changing your life, or before daring to be who you really are, isn't a flaw, but a signal? A signal that you're standing on the edge of something vast, something transformative, something that could make you great. Anxiety is one of the most misunderstood forces in human experience. It's been labeled as an enemy, something to fight, suppress, or escape. But deep within its trembling hands lies a hidden power, the same power that drove humanity to evolve, to create, to reach beyond its limits. From the philosophers of ancient Greece to modern psychology, from Kierkegaard to Nietzsche, from Freud to Viktor Frankl, the greatest thinkers have all whispered the same truth in different ways. Anxiety is not the obstacle, it is the doorway. And behind that doorway lies your potential for greatness. Because anxiety only appears where freedom exists. You don't feel anxious when you're trapped. You feel anxious when you realize you can choose. That uneasy flutter in your chest isn't the fear of failure, it is the vertigo of possibility. The mind begins to tremble not because it's weak, but because it suddenly sees how infinite its choices really are. So in this video, we'll explore the true nature of anxiety, not as a pathology, but as a signal of your untapped potential. We'll see how thinkers like Søren Kierkegaard and Friedrich Nietzsche viewed anxiety as the price and the privilege of being alive, awake, and free. And we'll learn how to turn that trembling into transformation, that uncertainty into momentum, that discomfort into greatness. Because when you understand what anxiety really is, you stop running from it and start walking through it. And on the other side, something extraordinary begins. The nature of anxiety, the dizziness of freedom. Anxiety isn't random. It doesn't appear out of nowhere. It arises the moment you realize that you are free. Søren Kierkegaard, the Danish philosopher, once wrote, "Anxiety is the dizziness of freedom." What did he mean by that? Imagine standing on the edge of a tall cliff. You look down and feel that familiar tension in your stomach, that electric mix of fear and fascination. You could fall, but you could also jump. That's the strange thing about freedom. It's thrilling, but it's also terrifying. Anxiety is that moment when you realize you are no longer being controlled by anything outside of you. No rules, no authority, no past trauma, no fate. You are the one holding the power to choose who to be, what to say, how to live. And that realization can make your soul tremble. That is why anxiety doesn't just come when you were in danger. It comes when your life could change. When you step into a new career. When you decide to leave or stay. When you start to see yourself differently. It is not a signal that you rebroken. It is a sign that you re-becoming. But here's the paradox. Most people run from this feeling. They distract themselves, numb themselves, drown the silence. Because the open space of freedom is too vast. They would rather feel safe inside their limitations than alive inside their potential. Yet every philosopher, every artist, every visionary who has ever changed the world has faced this exact trembling. The fear before the canvas, the hesitation before the idea, the anxiety before the leap. They learned that anxiety is not an enemy, but a compass. It points not to danger, but to destiny. Because the things that make you most anxious are often the things that matter most. When you feel that tightening in your chest before taking a risk, that's life asking you, are you ready to grow? And how you answer that question determines everything that follows. Friedrich Nietzsche once said, One must still have chaos in oneself to give birth to a dancing star. That chaos he spoke of is the same anxiety we try so hard to silence. But Nietzsche saw it differently. He believed anxiety wasn't a flaw in the human experience, but the engine of transformation. When you feel lost, uncertain, or afraid, that's not the universe punishing you. That's your inner world being rearranged. Old beliefs collapsing. Old versions of you dissolving. New possibilities beginning to take shape. In the dark. Anxiety, then, is not the storm that destroys you. It's the storm that clears the path. Most people avoid this chaos because it's uncomfortable. We crave stability, control, predictability. But Nietzsche warned that avoiding discomfort means avoiding depth. And if you avoid depth, you avoid life itself. He challenged us to embrace what he called amor fati, the love of one's fate. To not just accept the anxiety, the uncertainty, the pain, but to love it. Because hidden inside those experiences is the raw material of greatness. Think about it. Every breakthrough you've ever had began with anxiety. Before your first public speech, before your first heartbreak, before every decision that truly mattered. Anxiety was there, whispering, "This could change everything." And it did. So the real question is not, how can I stop being anxious? It's, what is this anxiety trying to awaken in me? When you stop running from that question, you realize that anxiety isn't the obstacle to freedom. It's the doorway. This is where philosophy meets direct experience, where thought collapses into awareness, and where the illusion of separation begins to dissolve. Let's slow down for a moment. When you say, "I am anxious," who is the I that observes the anxiety? And what is the anxiety itself? We usually imagine two things: me, the observer, and the anxiety, the observed. One watching, the other being watched. But look closely. When you actually observe your anxiety, feel it without trying to change it, can you truly find a boundary between you and it? The sensation in your chest, the thoughts racing in your head, the trembling awareness that says, "I'm anxious." Aren't they all happening in the same field of consciousness? That's what Krishnamurti meant when he said, "The observer is the observed." The moment you stop trying to fix, control, or analyze your anxiety, and instead simply see it, you realize something radical. There is no you separate from what you feel. You are that movement, the fear, the thought, the breath, all part of one living process. And in that direct seeing, a quiet shift happens. The struggle ends, because the division ends. You stop fighting anxiety and start being with it. And strangely, when you stop resisting it, it begins to lose its power. Not because you conquered it, but because you understood it. Understanding is freedom. When the observer and the observed become one, the mind stops creating conflict within itself. And what remains is a deep stillness, a peace that doesn't come after anxiety, but through it. That is the essence of awakening. Not escaping life's turbulence, but seeing that you were never separate from it. You are the storm, and the calm watching it all. Once you realize that the observer is the observed, something profound begins to unfold. You stop trying to control life. You see, control is born from fear. We try to manage every detail of our existence, our emotions, our image, our relationships, because we secretly believe that if we don't, everything will fall apart. But when you watch your anxiety without resisting it, you start to notice something astonishing. Life doesn't need your control to unfold. It's been unfolding perfectly, all along. Every breath you've taken, every heartbreak that led to growth, every detour that became destiny. None of it was under your command, yet it brought you exactly here. So what if freedom isn't about gaining control, but releasing it? Krishnamurti once said, "Freedom is not the opposite of bondage. Freedom is an understanding bondage." When you observe your thoughts and feelings without judgment, you begin to understand them. And through that understanding, they lose their grip. That's the irony of awakening. You stop fighting to be free and suddenly, you are. Because resistance is bondage. Every time you say, "This shouldn't be happening," you tighten the chains. But when you allow everything, the fear, the chaos, the uncertainty, you open the door to peace. It doesn't mean you become passive. It means you move through life with clarity instead of compulsion. You act not out of fear, but out of understanding. That's true intelligence. A freedom that doesn't depend on circumstances. You can be anxious and still at peace. You can be uncertain and still grounded. You can be fully human and fully aware. Because you finally see, freedom is not something you reach. It's something you realize. Right here, right now. When all the searching, resisting, and analyzing quiet down, What remains? There's a silence. Not the silence of emptiness, but of understanding. The silence that comes when the storm realizes it was never separate from the sky. You begin to sense something subtle, that throughout all the chaos, all the emotions, all the thoughts, something has always been still, a witnessing presence, unmoved, unchanged, aware. That presence is you. Not the personality, not the story, not the voice in your head, but the awareness in which all of those things appear. When you rest as that awareness, life continues, but the struggle doesn't. Emotions still move, but they no longer define you. Thoughts still arise, but they no longer rule you. You become like the sky, allowing every cloud, every storm, every ray of sunlight to pass through, untouched. And that's the paradox. When you stop trying to transcend your humanity, you finally meet the divine in everything. You walk, breathe, laugh, and love. But there's a still point inside you that never wavers. You realize, I am not in the world is in me. This is the end of anxiety, not its disappearance, but its transformation into wisdom. Because now, even when anxiety arises, you see it for what it is. A wave passing through the infinite ocean of awareness. And you are that ocean. Infinite. Silent. Free. Maybe this is what every philosopher, mystic, and seeker has been trying to say, that the peace we chase has been here all along. Not hidden in the future, but resting quietly behind every thought. All you have to do is see, not as the observer of life, but as life itself, because the observer is the observed.